Okay, so here we go. Getting ready to put the speedo drive back on the wheel. Get it all put back together. Grease Zerk fittings on top. Get it all greased up the worm drive, the ring drive, or ring gear. Got it all put back together. Came together nice. It's good that this one has the screws instead of rivets in it for that little ring, that little washer, depressed washer. So it's easy to put back in, easy to take out and easy to put back in. So I decided to stick with it. Don't really need it because once it goes on the wheel, it's kind of self-centering. So, but I put it on anyway. It was part of the original equipment. So what the heck, it doesn't hurt. Put it back. I even took my polishing cream and polished it up a little bit. So it's a little bit brighter. It's not exactly a mirror finish, but it's brighter, and buffed it up a little bit. So after a good cleaning and good re-greasing and reinstallation, it's all ready to go on again. So putting this back together, the order of everything going back together is this depressed washer goes back on first on top of the bearing, and it goes with the dimple or the depression facing down, so that you've got a cup on top. I'm just going to put a little bit of a light smear of grease on this. I always like greasing stuff up when it goes back together. You never know what's going to rub or move around, so it doesn't hurt. Put that on, so I'm going to go with that guy. And yep, she's down there good. So now next is this this setup here. So this is the felt washer, and it's on this spacer, and on one side of the spacer you've got this larger washer. So felt washer goes on like that, and you end up with it. It's a nice fit, and you can see it sits flush with the edge of this spacer, and that goes down. Now what I did was I put a couple of drops of oil in this just to moisten it up. This thing's lasted a long time and should last a long time as long as you kind of keep it a little damp, and I used oil, just plain old engine oil. And that way it won't dry out and start to fall apart. So that part goes on next. And there we go. And then the drive. So what I'm going to do, because I've already greased up the two drive pins, I'm just going to put a little bit of grease in these depressions that grab onto the drive pins and turn it. Allow it to turn as the wheel turns. And just to make sure, because you know you go backwards, you go forward, there's going to be a little bit of play on this. And then I'm going to put some grease on top of the washer here. A little bit more. And I'm just using plain old axle grease here. I mean the bearing will get warm, but it shouldn't get hot. So start seeing a lot of grease coming out of this, you got to start to worry a little bit. I wonder what's causing it to fly out. Some will fly out just from centrifugal force, but I would imagine. But there we go. So that should be enough. And now I just gotta line up the dogs on this with the there we go. And you can just feel it kind of slot itself down. And I just give it a couple of turns. So now the grease that I packed into the worm gear here, and I've already worked it a little bit on the bench, but I packed it down around the outside of the ring gear, and I packed it into as much as I could in the worm gear and gave it a shot through the Zerk fitting. So now I just want to turn it in here, feel how it turns. So it's turning free. You feel a little bit of a rough spot, but what I'm going to do is give it some turns, and then I'm going to take it off and have a look, see if any grease has kind of oozed its way out or what's happened, and see what it looks like. So let's take that off. All right. And I look inside. It still looks good. Yeah, still looks good. So I'm going to put a little more grease on top of the ring here because it is sitting on top of that washer. So grease that up, get everything nice and slippery and greasy. Don't have to put huge blobs on here, but put a bunch. All right, get back on and put on the nut. Now, go. So I'm going to put on the nut. I can't remember. I think there's a term for this kind of nut. It's a flat nut, but one side of it, the corners are chamfered or they're beveled over. This side is flat and this side is beveled over. I think, and I'm just going to go over and check my manual, but I think the beveled side goes down. I'm just going to double check. Yeah. Yes, that's what it shows. It shows the beveled side or the chamfered side going down, so that the side that's out is the flat part of the nut. Don't know if it makes any difference, but I don't see any reason not to put it back the way it came apart. So I'm just going to give it a little dab of grease here on the axle. Kind of wipe off the excess because there doesn't have to be a lot on there, just a little bit inside the threads. Well, I cleaned the threads on the nut and cleaned the threads on the axle at least twice that I can think of. Kind of pay attention to that sort of thing. That's good. Put this on hand tight. This is a 1 inch nut. Yeah, it's a 1 inch nut. I think that's around 27 millimeters. But the 1 inch wrench that I have, combination wrench, works really well. I'm only going to snug this up. Like, I didn't put any torque on that at all, just a little bit. It's got to be free to move with the axle, so that just is going to hold it down onto the axle, and that should work because the spacer underneath is kind of squeezing between the spacer and the threads, or the nut here that's threaded onto the axle. So that's good. So that's it. The wheel's back together, and she's ready to go back on the bike. So that's it. Just going to put it back on the bike. Hook up my cable, which I've oiled. I have a nice little cable oiler that I bought years and years ago, and disconnected the cable at the handlebar. Cleaned that all up, cleaned inside the lever, got all the dirt and grime and grease out of there, cleaned everything. The end of the cable's still good. I have a spare brake cable. I'm not going to put it on. This one's still good. I don't see any sign of corrosion or fraying, so I'm going to stick with that. Anyway, I put it back on into the lever, and just going to hook up the cable to this, just adjust it so there's no slack, and then I'm going to squeeze on the lever, center the shoes, so this, center the brake plate rather. Just put, I'll back off the nut a little bit so it'll move a little bit. Put on the brake, allow it to center and hold on. I'll just put a clamp on the brake lever because I'm by myself, and then I'll tighten up that center nut, which is really, that's all that does is just center the brake plate. It's not meant to necessarily squeeze it in. If you squeeze it in too much, it's not going to want to turn freely. It's not going to want to move. So just to center it, and probably put on a dab of blue Loctite there, the stuff that's not permanent, just to keep it from moving once I get it into adjustment. And that's it. That's the front wheel. So once I get that put back on, it's going to be off to the back wheel, and we'll do the back wheel and check the brakes. I don't know what kind of shape they're in. I don't imagine they'll be in great shape because the brakes have suffered cam loss